Meet a group of adults we will call Generation 4. They are successful professionals, but they live with a specific debilitating pressure: constant ambient anxiety, difficulty setting personal boundaries, and a hyper-awareness of potential threats. These individuals grew up in stable, middle-class homes. Standard psychological models struggle to explain this. Usually, this level of hypervigilance requires a direct, identifiable trauma in the patient's own life. Here, the symptoms exist without a clear cause. When present-day distress lacks an obvious origin, researchers treat the family history as a sequence of events. They trace the patterns observed in the present back to the structures that formed them in the past. This requires putting the family timeline under scrutiny. We look for specific behaviors in one generation and find their predecessors in the one before it, moving back until the patterns find their logical starting point. Complex psychological patterns suggest a history of specific, unacknowledged events. The consistency of these behaviors across a family indicates they were learned and transmitted, not developed at random. Moving back to Generation 3, the parents, the indicators become more severe. This generation exhibits panic awakenings, a need to control their environment through locking and confinement, and a somatic aversion to specific types of physical touch. This generation also displays hypervigilance, specifically around the safety of children. In clinical research, this combination of autonomic arousal and touch avoidance is a documented footprint of early life abuse or environments of captivity. To understand why these conditions persisted, we look at Generation 2, the grandparents. They did not just observe the dysfunction, they maintained an architecture of concealment designed to keep the family's private reality hidden from the outside world. This system relied on distinct roles. The minimizer downplayed the severity of harm. The enforcer used threats of emotional cutoff to ensure silence, and the image manager worked to project a narrative of a perfect, unified family to the public. Generation 2 reinforced this silence through religious frameworks and cultural honor-shame dynamics. Within this structure, anyone who attempted to address the dysfunction was labeled as unstable or disloyal, effectively neutralizing their testimony. A secrecy system this sophisticated, with coordinated narratives and defined roles, is an engineered response to severe historical circumstances. It is a structure built to contain information that would otherwise destroy the family identity. The evidence leads back to the first generation, located in the Cyrenaica region of eastern Libya between 1929 and 1934. This is where we find the originating event. During this period, the Italian fascist regime conducted a systematic military campaign to control the local population. This chart shows the demographic impact on Cyrenaica. The population dropped from 225,000 to 142,000 as the colonial regime forcibly interned 110,000 people, mostly women, children, and the elderly, into desert camps. Captives were marched through the desert as their livestock and nomadic way of life were systematically destroyed. This was a deliberate effort to dismantle the cultural identity and family structures of the population. These internees were held in concentration camps, characterized by starvation, epidemic disease, and public executions. The mortality rate in these camps reached an estimated 40 to 45%, creating an environment of total powerlessness. When mass violence is followed by decades of historical denial, it creates the ideal conditions for trauma to transmit. Without a way to process the experience, the survivors adapt by embedding the fear into the family structure itself. Returning to the present, the anxiety observed in Generation 4 is an unbroken, century-long echo of the Cyrenaican genocide. Because the history of the first generation was suppressed by the world, the second generation built a fortress of silence as a survival strategy. They traded the truth for the safety of a clean public image. This silence created a vacuum where dysfunction could grow unchecked. In the third generation, the unaddressed trauma from the past manifested as the severe hyperarousal and control behaviors we observed. Generation 3 then transmitted that persistent fear to the next generation. Even without knowing the history, the children of Generation 4 absorbed the ambient anxiety of their environment. Epigenetics and biology play a role, but the cycle is primarily fueled by the decision to keep the past hidden. The attempt to protect children by burying the history is often the very thing that ensures they inherit its symptoms. Treating the anxiety of the present requires more than looking at the individual. To stop the transmission, a family must dismantle the secrecy and acknowledge the history that has been driving the system for 100 years.